Hi guys, today we will be discussing the Leetcode question contains duplicate. It's an easy question, so a pretty basic question to go through if somebody is starting with arrays. So let's get on with it. So the question says that given an integer array nums, return true if any value appears at least twice in the array and return false if every element is distinct. So using an example, we can understand it a little bit better. So in this given example, we have 1, 2, 3 and 1. So we can see 1 is appearing twice in this array. So our code should return true. In this second example, we can see all the elements 1, 2, 3, 4. None of them are repeating more than once, which means all the elements are distinct. And that is why we'll be returning false, which means there is no duplicate in the current array. So how are we going to approach this question? There are a couple of ways in which we can solve this question. The easiest thing or the most simple one that comes into our head is brute force. So what would be the brute force solution? So in brute force, what we can do is that suppose we have 1, 2, 3 and 1 in our array. We can create a for loop to iterate through each of the elements, and for each element we can iterate through the rest of the array to check if there is another element present. If there is an element present, then we'll return true. If not, then we'll have to move on to the next element and again iterate through the rest of the array. Now this will obviously require the use of at least 2 for loops, which is why the time complexity will come up to be at least O of n squared. That's the best, like, worst case time complexity. Because in this first question over here, we have 1 as the first element itself. So we'll only have to do it like probably once. So it might not be that bad. But then there might be situations like 2, 3, 1, 1 where we'll have to iterate through the entire array twice for each of the elements till we come across the duplicate elements. So the time complexity in this scenario will be O of n square, and the space complexity, because we are not using any extra space, would be O of 1 because we are not using any extra space. So this is an acceptable approach, I guess, but I think in case of interviews, we'll obviously have to give the best solution possible, and this is not the best solution. There are other ways in which we can do it. So the second way we can approach this question is that we can sort the array. So in our example, we have 1, 2, 3 and 1. If we sort this array, we'll have 1, 1, 2, 3. So once we have sorted the array, all we'll have to do is that we'll have to iterate through this entire array only once. And while we're iterating, we just need to check whether the current element and the next element are matching. If the current and the next element are matching, that means there is a duplicate present and we can return true just then. If not, we can just move our pointers to the next element and check if they are matching, and this goes on and on. So although we will only need to iterate through this array once, the time complexity will not be O of n, it will be O of n log n. Why? That is because the sorting function that we are going to use, it also requires some time complexity, right? So we know that it will take n log n, so that is why our time complexity will be n log n, and the space complexity again in this case will be O of 1 because we are not requiring any extra space. This is also a good solution. And whenever we are seeing that our complexities are going downwards, it's a good sign. But can we make this even less? Yes, we can, using hash maps or hash set. What we'll have to do in this case is that we just have to create an extra map data structure, and we'll have to store all our elements inside of it. So suppose we have 1, 2, 3, 1. We'll store 1 in our hash set, and first of all, we'll have, for each of the elements in the array, we'll have to check if it is present in the hash map already. If not, then we'll add it to the hash map, right? The next element is 2, it is not there in the hash map, so we'll add it. Next element is 3, it is not there, so we'll add that. Then we have 1. 1 is already present in the hash map, which means we have found a duplicate array and we can return true. So this requires an extra space, however it only requires us to go through the array only once, which is why this time complexity in this scenario will be only O of n, and the space complexity will be O of n. Maybe it might be less, but in the worst case scenario, if we have all distinct elements, then we'll have to store all of them in the hash map, which is why the worst case space complexity will be O of n. That is, n means that's the size of the array, right? So this over here is the best solution possible, and let's see how we can implement this using C++. So here is our question on Leetcode. So as we discussed earlier, the first step would be we need to define the hash set where we are going to store the elements of the array. And the next step is that we are going to insert each element of the array into the hash set according to the condition. And what was the condition? The condition was that if the element is not already present in the hash set, then we are going to insert it. Otherwise, we are just going to return true, because that would show that we already have a duplicate because it is already present in the hash set. So let's see how we are going to define the hash set. So define the hash set, we are going to write unordered set int. Why are we using the int? Because the array that has been provided to us is an integer array. So I'm going to name it numset. The next step is that I'm going to start inserting the elements in the hash set given that our condition is satisfied. For that, I'm going to start a for loop where for n in nums, I'm going to check if the element is present in the hash set, that is numset.find n, which is our element in the nums array, if it is not equal to numset.end, because it's just the condition. This shows that we have not reached the end of the hash set, and if we find it before reaching the end of the hash set, which means that element is already present in the hash set, then as we discussed earlier, we are just going to return true. If this condition is not satisfied, we'll have to insert the element inside the hash map. So I'm going to write numset dot insert n, which is our element, current element in the array. So over here we are not using any else statement because our if is already checking if our duplicate is present, and if it is present, then we are going to exit this entire code, and if not, then we are simply going to insert the element. So we don't need an else situation over here. And if all this is completed, then we are simply going to return false, because if we have reached this statement, the return false statement, which means we have not found any duplicates in our given array. So let's try to run this code. So it's running successfully and all the test cases have passed, and that's it. This is how you can solve the contains duplicate question on Leetcode. It's a very basic question, and for anybody starting with arrays or DSA, this is a very good question to start with, and it is often asked in many company interviews. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining in. See you in the next one.